Welcome to City at a Glance. My name is David Young, and joining us today, as always, is our city manager, Darren Atterbury. Darren, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, David.
And today we're talking about our capital expansion tax. This includes building on basics and looking to the future with Building on Basics 2.0. Joining us today to discuss this is Jenny Sawyer, who is our policy and project manager.
Yes, thank you, David.
Thank you. Wendy Williams, the assistant city manager with the city of Fort Collins. Thanks for joining us, Wendy.
Thank you.
And also with planning, development, and transportation, Karen Cumbo. Karen, thank you for being here. So to start, Darren, let me ask you, can you tell us a bit of background about the planning, the capital expansion tax and what the history of that is?
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to. And David, thanks for having this show. I think it's a topic that's going to be very important for this community over the coming months, and I appreciate having a chance to talk about it, and Karen and Wendy and Jenny and your role. You know, this community over 30 years ago, starting with DT Square, which was Designing Tomorrow Today, was a 1 cent capital tax that they put in front of the voters and asked, would you be willing to support a tax increase for this list of projects? And the voters said yes in 1973. And since that time, the city of Fort Collins has come back numerous times and asked the voters in 6 to 8 to 10 year increments for this list of projects, would you support a tax increase or a continuation? And what we're talking about today is not an increase, it's a continuation of a tax. But and that series of those series of ballot measures have really shaped this community, whether it's transportation facilities, whether it's things like the Lincoln Center and the Edora Pool and Ice Center, or various parks or trails, or on and on and on. There's just a list of many projects over this 30 plus years that this community has, again, been faced with a list that's been developed by past councils and staffs. They put them in front of the voters, and the voters have approved those decade after decade. And so now we're as you mentioned, we're in a time where we get the privilege of working as a staff and working with the council, and then ultimately asking the voters to continue for a certain series of projects. I will tell you, and then we'll go to the discussion, I will tell you that this is a bit of an unusual way to fund capital projects. As I've worked with various cities around the country, it's pretty unique. But I think what's really special about this, David, is that there's a community process to ID what those projects are, and then there's an election or a council vetting, and then an election, and then there's regular reporting. And this organization and community has delivered on every one of those things that we've promised. And then when you come back and ask voters, will you support? If we've been true to what we promised, time and time again, the voters will support it. And so I'm really excited about the sort of the democracy side of this process, the fact that these projects aren't a mandate from the council down, they're really a bottoms-up kind of approach. And so we're really beginning to engage in that process, and I'm very, very excited about it. And to say succinctly, this is a very, very important part of building Fort Collins into the future.
Certainly. So with that 30 years and this tax in mind, I wanted to pose the question to the group, what are some memorable projects over the years that come to mind? Maybe somebody has a favorite, per se.
How about one of you two? You've had some biggies.
Our community parks have been one of the things that are greatly appreciated, and one of the things that sort of make us unique. We have some pretty innovative, amazing parks, and one of the things that we're actually looking at and building in this next round of capital improvement projects is another community park, so that's a big one. Certainly our Lincoln Center, not only was that built with an initial capital improvement project, but also an expansion. The recent expansion was funded that way. Our senior center, the same situation. We're just bringing online, in fact, our grand opening is this Thursday of the new, improved, expanded senior center. So that's a wonderful project. You know, one of the things that we try to do every year, that every time we go through this process and look at projects, is try to come up with something that has broad community appeal, so that we have things that are of interest to just about everybody, whether it's young or old and everything in between. So those are some of our wonderful projects that we wouldn't have without this capital expansion.
Definitely. Does anybody else have any?
North College improvements have been very important for that part of the community. intersection improvements, which is important for safety, as well as capacity, new buses, and we use the money from capital expansion funds to leverage federal funds and other funds, so it really makes the money go farther. So those have been very significant in the kinds of services that we can provide.
Definitely.
So we have certainly police services also benefits from these capital taxes, frequently in the way of whether it's buying land for future actual buildings and needs, or whether it's actual technology type of improvements, or it's called a CAD system, but some other technology that makes emergency operations run. Those are some of the things that you may not see, but that obviously have great appeal to everyone in the community and that are really important.
A couple that come to mind for me are accessibility improvements. So sidewalk improvements, missing gaps that in our pedestrian network, our bicycling network, trails and bike lanes and bikeways. And then one big one of recent is the Museum of Discovery, and a world-class facility dedicated to teaching kids about science and music and really encouraging discovery with kids and with adults in the community. I want to just add what Karen said. There's some of the intersection improvements, whether it's specific intersections or whether it's even some of the back office stuff that keeps traffic signals operating efficiently. And Jenny mentioned the computer-aided CAD, computer-aided dispatch. That system is very, very expensive and needs to be upgraded every 10 years or so. And we've found that this has been a great way to fund some of those needs that directly serve the community, but people don't see. They're back office kinds of improvements. But the list goes on and on and on. We could scroll a list of projects since 1973, and we'd consume the entire show.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to focus in on building on basics. Could you tell folks a bit about building on basics and that specific tax and what has been accomplished with that over the past couple years?
Yeah, you know what, Jenny, would you take that?
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to read a few.
Sure.
But Karen has mentioned a lot of the North College improvements happened. The Museum of Discovery was part of that one. The Lincoln Center and Senior Center renovation and expansions. But then on here we also do have a lot of park upgrades and enhancements, and those do include upgraded restrooms in our parks and a lot of ADA accessibility that you talked about, which is really important. Timberline Road, Drake to Prospect. Karen, you might be able to speak to some of those specific ones. And what else? When Building on Basics, the original one went in, the library was still part of the city and not its own district. Right. So actually they had some technology improvements that were included in there as well. So you can see how trends and things change over time. In some areas, some are always important, like the intersections and ADA access and those kinds of things.
Definitely.
And that tax, David, is expiring on December 31st of 2015. And so the reason why we're having the conversation now is we anticipate that the council will place a ballot measure in April of 15 prior to its expiration in December. And, as the reason why we're talking about this is because that we're in the planning process right now. Again, we expect that an April 15 election will occur. But we want to make sure that the community has a chance to have significant input on the list of projects, that we can hear what concerns people may have. And again, then come April, we'll ask if the voters will continue that tax. And it's a quarter cent. And, the council will have options based on feedback from the community. There could be right now we're thinking a 10-year time frame. So that tax would be renewed for 10 years. And that generates X amount of money. And so, right now, as everyone here knows, we have a list of projects that's $350+ million, and that needs to be narrowed down to a list that's probably, Jenny, around $80 million if it's a 10-year period. And again, that's why we're having the conversation today, because we want to be responsible in that public process and then ultimately put a package in front of the voters that we think will be supported and will continue this legacy.
Definitely. And that, I believe what you're referring to has been sort of dubbed Building on Basics 2.0, or kind of the next
Right.
the next phase of this, looking to the future. Could you speak a bit to that, about kind of down the road, why voters should come out in April, and why they should take the time to vote on this tax, why it's important, and why it is such a big deal for the community, if you will?
Well, let me say, and Wendy and Karen and you and Jenny and I, anyone who's close to the city, you know, whether we're out at a grocery store or whether we're in our neighborhoods or whatever, people want to share their feedback about the city. And we recently did a survey, your office, David, that said that 96 or 97% of community members are satisfied with their local government and their community. That's huge.
Yeah.
I've not been in a place where there's that much level of support, but that doesn't come easily. You have to earn that, and you have to build the trust, and you have to deliver on what you promised. And I think that we've done exactly that with Building on the Basics. But I will tell you, I think in order to continue the level of community that we've all come to expect in Fort Collins, it requires an investment. I think that as you look at the cost, as local governments go, the cost of local government in Fort Collins relative to our peers is it's right in line with sort of the average cost as whether your taxes, fees, fines, charges. So people are getting, I think, a very good deal with this local government, but it takes investment. So you don't get museums of discovery, and you don't get the kinds of roadways that we have, and you don't get the responsive 911 system without investment. And so I think what we're going to be asking the community is, number one, what should this future investment look like, and would you support us in moving forward? I think, though, that before we talk about sort of telling people this is important, we don't even know what that list looks like yet. Mm-hmm. So having the engagement process where people have a chance to develop what that list looks like through staff, through the council, through boards and commissions, through our outreach programs is really critical.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it. I know I'm talking a lot here, but I do want to say the fact that we're going through our 2-year budget right now, and concurrently we're going through the quarter cent conversations, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about street maintenance for a second. This community, this council, has an incredible opportunity to shape the next 10 to 20 years in this community. Mm-hmm. And for all of us around this room, what a privilege it is. And Wendy, you've been through several of these measures. To be part of IDing a list and then designing and building those and watching those be used, I can't. That's one of the greatest privileges of being in this community. I don't know.
One of the things that we do is we pay a lot of attention to what we hear in the citizen surveys. Mm-hmm. When we put together our master plans, for example, for parks, and one of the things that was identified was that the southeast part of the community is growing rapidly, and they don't have a community park. So this is an opportunity for us to not only bring on a new community park, but to do something that is completely different from anything we've done before. So we're looking at perhaps some sort of a creative community center that would be unique and a major attraction, not only for the southeast part of the community, but for the entire community. Then we also have heard through citizen surveys and through surveys that we've done with trail users that there's a tremendous appetite for our trails. You know, we have a lot of trails already, and they're well used, but we have some significant gaps. Some areas that if we could finish up certain stretches, we could be connected all the way to Greeley. Okay. So we're looking at including some of those things. Mm-hmm. One of the nice things that we're looking at is that there are a number of projects that are very expensive, will take time to complete, but we're looking at phasing them in over time.
Mm-hmm. And Darren mentioned this earlier, but the street maintenance tax, Karen, I do want to make sure that we speak to that. Could you tell us a bit about that and what that entails?
Well, the street maintenance tax is a separate quarter cent tax, and it is on the same time frame as the capital expansion tax. And it's, the city until now, and hopefully in the future, has made the decision to invest in streets before they fail. That if you spend money on regular maintenance, just like your roof. You don't have to replace the whole thing. I had an interesting experience over the weekend when I was in another state that has elected not to maintain its streets, and they have a street that is more potholes than street, connecting to arterials. People can't use it, and they will have to take the whole thing out and rebuild it. And we've been very fortunate in that we can invest the money. It's based on data. There's a pavement condition index for every street in the city, and we have long-term plans for maintaining the streets. People will often ask us, that street's in perfectly good condition. Why are you spending money on that street? And it's to maintain it in good condition and keep it from failing. And so I think that's confusing for people, when something nearby may be failing already or is in the kind of condition that South College has been in, which is a state responsibility and will be addressed next year. But maintaining is a very critical piece.
Well, I think that's a really important piece. In addition to streets maintenance on the capital side, we have some gaps that are pre-existing that we need to really work on. I mean, as the community grows, this is not about building, 3, 4 more museums and discoveries and epic centers and Lincoln centers. It's one of the things that I think the council's going to be focused on because we're hearing it from the community, and that's why we call it building on basics. It's looking at our current investments and where those are depreciating or needing significant maintenance, and that's why I talked about filling gaps in the pedestrian network and the bike network. I think that the council, when all is said and done with community input, I think we're going to have a package that hopefully there are some new amenities added to this community, and there is a significant investment in the quality. And I think that what we're going to be talking a lot about is existing neighborhoods at that level. What kind of capital investments can be made in different existing neighborhoods to help with neighborhood cut through traffic and speeding? And what about lighting? And what about, all kinds of things. So I think, it's real easy on shows like this for me to talk about new, bright, and shiny objects, but I think this investment in our current system, to me, seems to be a theme that's emerging from City Council these days and the mayor as well.
Definitely.
We have 198 miles of missing sidewalks.
Oh, okay.
We completed a pedestrian inventory last year. We have a lot of missing sidewalks. We have 6,000 missing or deficient ADA ramps. Those are big challenges.
Yes.
And, just like the entire rest of the country, investment in infrastructure is difficult. We have bridges, and we have more bridges than people are aware of because it's not just the Poudre and Spring Creek. It's underground ditches that go all through town that have bridges that fail.
Yeah.
And so I think we have a big challenge ahead of us in trying to maintain those kinds of structures as well.
Definitely. One thing I definitely want to give folks an opportunity is how to get involved with moving forward with this project, what they can do. So Jenny, maybe you could speak to that a bit. What if somebody is interested in this and would like to help shape the future of Fort Collins?
Yes.
What can they do?
So we're going to be in a process of narrowing and prioritizing. If you look at when we start this process, because we start early, looking at what's been approved in master plans, as we talked about, looked at what's been bubbled up through the citizen surveys, and really putting every idea on the table. That dollar amount is huge, obviously. And so now we start the process of narrowing it down. We will go to council quite a few times in that process to get some direction and help do that. But I will say that August through October of this year, we will be really trying to engage the public in that conversation. Some of it will look similar to the budget exercise if people participated in that with some online stuff and a website and tell us your priorities. And initially we'll just try to sort of start the narrowing, and then when it really comes down to what exactly are we going to put on this ballot as far as projects, then it's, we're going to get more and more detailed in our questioning and asking as we go. Planning on having certainly board and commission type meetings. We're going to have a subscribe newsletter. If people would like staff to come talk to any existing group or interested group, we're more than happy to do a road show and take it out. And we'll be trying to get people's attention for sure. So it'll be a thorough process and hopefully a really exciting one.
And again, it's a golden opportunity for people who love this community to shape the next at least 10 years.
Yes.
And so if people have an interest in this kind of thing, which I think most of Fort Collins does, I think Jenny and the team are really going to give many opportunities for people to get engaged.
Definitely.
I think, I've learned a lot in this process. I've not been directly involved in these previous measures, but again, these are 2 renewals that bring a lot of benefit to the city, some very obvious and tangible, some more behind the scenes, but very impactful. And I think about, if we're looking at a quarter cent, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's 25 cents on a $100 purchase. So if you equate it that way, bringing in almost $7 million a year, that's money we're not having to take out of our regular budget. And as we do this budget process, if you think about what that would look like if we were trying to manage that, I'm one of those silly people. I get excited about learning about these things and what we can get done as a community doing these things together.
And then a reminder, the actual vote takes place.
Should be in April.
Okay.
City council has to refer that, and again, a lot of public process between now and then to determine if that feels right to the community. But I think certainly to council, that seems like a good time to do this.
Our initial conversations with council have been that they'll place these 2 ballot measures on April of 2015. The other thing real quickly that I want to mention is we're talking about ideas and civic engagement and all kinds of things and democratic process. People like Karen and Wendy and various departments around the city also have well-established master plans. So I don't want people to think it's just what does everyone sort of want to put on these lists. We have a very well-informed process of a street master plan, a facilities master plan, on and on and on. And so that the departments are going to be feeding into that process as well. So we will hopefully, and that's where the $300 and some million worth of projects come from. They come from our master plans, strategic plan, and they also come from ideas that people have had or heard, or we've heard from council their interests. So there's a big melting pot, right? We have this wide list of projects, and then again we narrow it. So as a staff, we will also, as we go through this process, ultimately make a recommendation to council, which will probably be a combination of what's in adopted master plans, what have we heard from the council and their desires in this package, what's in our adopted budget, and then also what are we hearing from various stakeholder groups and then individuals throughout the community.
Definitely. So we're almost out of time. I'd like to thank everybody for joining me today. This is obviously a topic that there will be more to come. It's a big issue for Fort Collins and something of interest. For anybody who would like to learn more about this process, please take a moment to visit fcgov.com /BOB. Again, fcgov.com/BOB, where you can learn more about this. Darren, would you like to close with anything?
Yeah, I want to just say thanks for everyone for being part of the discussion and really the 3 of you and your work to date and with your parts of the organization. And Jenny, you've been really doing an amazing job getting us to this level. I'm really proud to be part of an organization and a community that plans and then builds its plan. I've said it before, many communities plan and don't build those plans, and many communities build and they don't plan. Fort Collins has been a rock-solid planner and builder, and it is a real privilege to work with people like each of you and to be part of a community that cares about this and consistently supports its local government, and then to be working with a board of directors like our mayor and city council. It's just a wonderful privilege, and I hope that people do come out and do participate, and then ultimately choose to support or not support in April if that's council's decision.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, and we hope that you'll join us again for our next City at a Glance.